Hey, 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 Viva Lifers, it's Dr. Kelly OMD. We are here for another wonderful episode of Ask Dr. Kelly OMD. Tonight, we have a special guest that is coming on with us. It is Devin Morrison. He is a retired captain of the United States Navy. He has been a mentor, a sponsor, and an advocate for me. And I tell you, what I learned from him is how to be a leader with grace. So, Devin, tell us a little bit more about yourself so we can get started.
Well, yes, good evening, Dr. Kelly, and good evening to all of our guests. A little bit about me. I retired from the Navy in 2021. I did 24 years of the Navy as a healthcare administrator. And since that time, I've been working in the private sector. And for the last couple of years, I've really been pondering the topic of grace and how I wish it had played a role in my life much sooner. So it's been heavy on my heart lately.
So that being said, what are three things you want us to learn from what you're going to talk about tonight?
Sure. Well, the first is that, like so many things in our life, exercise, investing, grace needs to be a proactive, intentional act. It will not happen on its own. We really have to put thought to it for it to take root and become part of our neurological muscle memory. The second is that grace can actually become contagious. When others see us personifying an attitude of grace towards them, it'll de-escalate that cynicism and anxiety that is so pervasive in our society. And we can become an incubator for grace amongst the circle of people around us. And the other is that grace is not a get out of jail card. Jesus may have forgiven us, but you can forgive yourself the first day you go to the gym, but the 30th day you don't go to the gym, you need to really have a gut check, and you cannot pull the grace card at that point. So those are the three takeaways.
Well, we cannot wait to get into it because I know we need to make sure that we are proactive. I know that we need to be intentional, and no, grace is not a get out of jail card. So go ahead and let us know what you got for us tonight.
Sure. So my own journey with grace, as I said, I wish that I had delved into this topic sooner in life, because I think for a long period of time, and perhaps for some of those on the call, I beat myself up over a lot of things. I beat myself up over mistakes. I beat myself up over things where perhaps I got a 94 and why didn't I get a 95? I beat myself up over things that went undone. And really, I should have been giving myself some grace, because all along that journey, I was probably doing better than I gave myself credit for. The other is that grace and forgiveness are often used interchangeably. And it's important to know that those two topics are not the same. Forgiveness, there has to be an offense to take place to forgive someone. And then the forgiveness is a reactive response to that offense. Whereas grace, there is no offense that necessarily has to have taken place, and it needs to be a proactive attitude. So I can have grace for myself, and it doesn't mean I messed up. It just means maybe I need to be a little less harsh on myself. And like so many of us, I first became exposed to the topic of grace, through my path walking with Christianity. But for the purpose of this discussion, I really think the whole topic of grace is something that we can take out from a biblical sense, and we can really just have a broader discussion about, what it means to us. And then there's not just grace towards ourselves, which is hugely important, but there's also grace towards others, which is tremendously important. So the topic of grace, why is it so hard, was one of the things that I really like. Why is this topic so hard for us to make part of our life? And I think one of the reasons is we have a limited perspective on things, right? If somebody cuts us off, driving down the interstate, we don't know their situation. But at that point, we have a choice, right? Or are we going to act perhaps irrationally? Or are we going to perhaps have some grace and say, you know what, maybe this person is on the way to the hospital because they have a dying loved one and they're in a rush. So sometimes grace can be hard because we don't have the full perspective. Another reason grace can be hard is because perfectionism. Successful, driven people, we tend to be perfectionists, and we're just really quite hard on ourselves. We don't need to be. And there's a lot of great podcasts out there and books about perfectionism and how it can actually be a negative attribute. Sure, it makes you successful, but at some point, it can actually be a distraction from your performance. Another thing is pride. Pride gets in the way of having grace. particularly having grace towards other people. We become a bit prideful, and that makes it hard. And the other is we're just conditioned by culture. We live in such a world where we're bombarded by imagery and social media and mass marketing, and you have to be perfect. That this our culture doesn't really always afford us the opportunity to show grace towards ourselves, because we have to measure up. We've got to measure up to the next person, the next house, the next blemish on our face. So sometimes society is working against our ability to have grace for ourselves. But why is it important? I know in my life, there were times where I made a mistake, and I became so focused on the mistake, and that instead of having grace for myself and detaching from the mistake, I missed the lesson learned. And instead of moving forward, instead of saying, you know what, this happened, I'm going to have grace for myself, here's the lesson learned, and move forward, I just get mired in the feeling of I screwed that up. So we miss the lesson learned sometimes when we don't have grace. And I think we fail to live up to our full potential sometimes, because it's like we build a fence around ourselves because we have this attitude that we're not good enough. And there's a lot of things that feed into this, right? There's insecurity, perhaps depression, anxiety, family situations. So there's a lot of reasons, barriers to having grace for ourselves. But I would say that if we don't do it, we're not living up to our full potential. And so we have an obligation to ourselves. So how do we have more grace towards ourselves? I think we recognize that it's important. I think we recognize there are barriers to it, but how do we get there where we can have more grace for ourselves? One is, I think we have to accept imperfection. Nobody is perfect, and we say that, and we acknowledge that, but yet we live in this zero defect society that doesn't allow imperfections, right? Just talk to the next person on the news that makes a misstated quote or comment during a speech or something. They're fired. We live in this perfection society. So I would say we need to accept our own imperfection. We also need to have gratitude. An absence of gratitude really causes us to grill ourselves really hard. But if we can have gratitude for what we have, and what our life experience, I think that we're better positioned to give ourselves grace and give ourselves, what, it's going to be okay, because we all have tough times. That's for darn sure. So some self-compassion, I feel, is important. Putting down, stop scrolling, putting down the phone, putting down the internet, and just unplugging, I think, is hugely important. Finding that space, that quiet time where we can reflect on who we are and all we have, and say, you know what, it's not going to be that bad, because we can really get mired. And I think humor is important. Humor is really important to having grace. Most of the stuff in life is not as serious as we think it is at the moment it's happening. And I was reflecting on a story. I was talking to my oldest daughter, and she, like many teens, she wanted something, clothing, jewelry, I don't know, a pair of Golden Goose sneakers, and this is her whole existence at this moment in time. And I asked her, I said, well, let's look in your closet and point out something you don't use anymore. And I guarantee at a moment in time in the past, that was the most important thing in your life, right? So I think humor and unplugging can really help us gain perspective. And I know one of the things that has helped me on my personal journey of grace is cognitive behavioral therapy. I believe in it. I feel it works. It is something you can do on your own. You don't need a high-paid therapist. There are books, there are workbooks for cognitive behavioral therapy. And I really feel that those tools help you rewrite the script in your mind that will allow you the latitude for grace. And then there's grace for other people. And many folks, it's kind of like gift giving, right? I know me personally, I would rather give a gift to someone than receive a gift, right? Receiving a gift might make me uncomfortable, but I can give gifts to other people all day. And I think grace sometimes is that way. I can give grace to people all around me and ask them how they're doing and extend a hand and encourage them. But then I'll go home and I'll just grill myself. And there are some psychological components to that, and how our brains are wired. But I think sometimes as a starting point, giving grace to other people, not having prideful interactions with other people allows us to show more grace towards them, encouraging them, supporting them, showing them gratitude, and taking an interest. That's one of the things that I've really tried to do as of late. As an introvert, I lose energy by interacting sometimes with other people. But one simple technique I found is I ask people questions, maybe one or two or three questions. It opens up the dialogue and it allows me an opportunity to ask them how they're doing or what they need. And it gives me a chance to show them grace. So I would say that grace needs to be proactive. You need to be conscious of it. You need to think about it. It can become contagious. I think that a lot of things in life, we know that negativity can become contagious, right? If one person's negative, someone else can be negative. So there's no reason to think that the positive aspects of the human experience cannot be contagious as well. And then, of course, grace is not a off-ramp to accountability. We still have to have accountability in our life. We still have to be honest with ourselves. But don't let that honesty go so far that we are detracting from our true accomplishments and our true successes in life, because you're probably better than what you think you are, and you're probably further ahead than how you might feel some nights when you lay your head down on your pillow. So just give yourself a little bit of grace as you go throughout your day.
So thank you so much, Devin. My first question is, you said something, it's like you said in the beginning, and I've been thinking about it almost the whole time. When you said forgiveness is
Yes.
different.
Yes, forgiveness is different than grace. So forgiveness involves an offense. I did something, you were offended, you choose to forgive me.
Mm.
Now, grace, there is no offense in play for the most part. It is a proactive response or act of kindness or generosity. And there is no offense involved. If I open the door for you, if I don't have to screw up to give myself grace, right? I can go to the gym and have a decent workout and come home and beat myself up. I didn't have a bad workout, but I still come home and I beat myself up, right? So there doesn't have to be an offense to take place for grace. And I think that's how we tend to use the words interchangeably a lot, but they are two distinct things when you start to break them down to their component parts.
No, I think that's important because a lot of times, I don't know, maybe from what I've read, I've always thought, okay, I forgive and then I give grace, right? But it can't just be that, like you said, the person hasn't done anything. It's your perspective. It's what you perceive the person has or hasn't done, and whether it was wrong or right. It's just to be able to open your aperture and say, oh, okay, well, that's a different way of doing things. So, let me give you some grace in that. And I think you also said something else that was really important, that, grace is better given than received. We all would love to have grace from other people, but giving that grace makes such a huge difference. Can you kind of expound upon that?
Yeah, for some people, it's easier to give grace. We're all our worst judges, right? So for some individuals, it's easier to give grace. Like I can go around and be kind to people all around me, but then I can beat myself up internally. It's interesting, and there are some research, and particularly with gratitude, there's some very good research that things like grace and gratitude and kindness will actually release certain brain chemicals.
Mm.
Uh, and then, much like an addiction to substances, the brain can actually become addicted to these chemicals that are released through kindness and gratitude. And it kind of feeds on itself. because the brain loves the chemicals. Brains love chemicals. We know that. So you release, some dopamine or you name it, through an act of grace or kindness, and the brain's like, whoa, I want more of that. So it becomes like a wheel in motion. It's harder to get it in motion than it is to keep it in motion. Um, and I would say, but it has to be proactive. And don't beat yourself up if you're not perfect, right? Sometimes I use the example of meditation. People will often try meditation and they go, oh, I did it for 2 minutes and I started thinking about the electric bill and I needed to feed the cat and I've got an oil change. And the purpose of meditation isn't not to think of things. It's the act of acknowledging those things and then pushing them out of the way and coming back to center. So as you go through your journey with grace, don't beat yourself up next time someone cuts you off and you perhaps, run off a string of profanities, right? Just come back to center and say, you know what, I'm going to do better next time because I may not have perfect information. That could be an individual running to the hospital because their partner's going in labor. And you just come and you just come back to center and you try to do better next time. And really the human experience, I think in some ways that's what it's all about. We're all trying to do better the next time.
Comment. It says, I don't have a question, but a comment. Very nice to hear a man, particularly one who retired from the military, to speak of grace. I always perceive military men to be hard, rough, and definitely not the kind who give grace because of such high expectations of the service members. You have any feedback on that?
Well, I would blame movies and culture perhaps for that perception. Having been in the military and knowing others in the military, and I don't think the military has a monopoly on this. I think we all we wear a mask, and all of our situations in life, whether it be at home or at work, they all require us sometimes to wear different masks. So certainly the person I was at work, although you like to be genuine and you like to be the same person 24/7, situations require different tools. So yes, when you're going into combat, it's not the time to ask for consensus. And I would joke that we're here to protect democracy, not practice it. And sometimes situations call for that. Um, but I think the majority of the folks that are in the military, in the situation, male, you're functioning in a role, and that role expects certain things of you. Some people perhaps take that role home, and they make it a bigger part of their life, and some people are able to leave it at home, just like any other professional that goes to work and comes home. But I personally feel that as a leader and as hopefully a full grown adult at this time, you have to have multiple tools in your toolbox, and sometimes you have to be able to adjust very quickly to different situations.
Thank you so much for that comment, Tiffany, and also thank you so much for that response. Let's see, we have another one. How do you recharge your grace stockpile? What are
Mm,
some examples?
yes. But I would say it's different for everyone.
Mhm.
Personally, I think sleep is tremendously important. We undervalue sleep in our society. We perceive it as lazy or non-productive. And I think that that's to the detriment of our health and well-being as a society. Me personally, I like to exercise. I feel that that's one of the ways I recharge. I do a lot of reading. I try to read things that will help me understand how the brain works. I feel the more I can learn about, the prefrontal cortex and the limbic part of your brain and how it works, I think it gives me a leg up on knowing why I do the things I do, but B, understanding a little bit of why other people do the things they do. I would say that when you interact with an individual and perhaps they behave in an erratic manner, try to ask, is this a symptom of something bigger? Oftentimes the way people behave, particularly if they're behaving erratically, it's a symptom of something bigger. And we can't pridefully get wrapped up in addressing the symptom. Maybe we need to take a step back and try to look at what bigger thing is going on in this person's life that's causing them to behave this way. And you're not going to solve it, right? A jerk is a jerk at the Starbucks counter that cuts in front of you. You're not going to unpack their life and try to understand why they're a narcissist and they feel entitled to cut in front of you, there at the checkout line. But I do think it's intriguing to try to understand why people behave the way they do instead of just focusing on how they're behaving. But yeah, recharging is an individual decision. Obviously I read the Bible, and I try to emulate to the best of my ability being a good person. But again, we all snap at some point in time.
Absolutely. And you know what, like you said, tomorrow is a new day, and we're
Mhm.
trying to be better every single day. So thank you for that question. And it's funny, you mentioned a lot of things. So Viva Lifers on here, and you guys can type in the chat, or raise your hand or come off mute if you want to. But in Viva Life, we talk about the Viva Life 5. And the Viva Life 5 is meditation, journaling, exercise, optimize our nutrition, and our sleep. So anytime we talk about how do we rejuvenate, how do we relax, how do we, put the stockpile the grace, how do we restock the grace, it's doing those 5 things. Because if we do those 5 things for ourselves first, then we'll be able to lend something else to someone else. So we talk about that all the time. And then, y'all know, eating healthy as much as you possibly can makes a whole lot of difference. It makes a whole lot of difference, especially as we go through these transitions of decades is what I call them. Every decade you have like a new thing that's going on in your body or something that you're dealing with. And if you can help yourself eat that Viva Life 5, and if you can do the Viva Life 5 things that we talked about, you will spiritually, physically, financially, mentally, and emotionally be a better person each and every day. So I think we have another question or comment. Let's say, I was thinking the same thing. Meditation and sleep, it's a recurring theme to being the best versions of ourselves. So my question to each one of you on here is, and you can go ahead and put it in the chat, are you giving yourself grace? And we're going to wait to see what you say.
Yeah, Dr. Kelly, I think as folks are answering that, I do think it's unfortunate that the 5 principles, the 5 tenets that you touched on, they really are not valued in our society as much as they should be. Particularly in Western cultures, I think we undervalue sleep. We undervalue nutrition, right? It's cheaper to eat at Taco Bell than it is to go get a plate of Whole Foods. We undervalue meditation. We undervalue solitude and quiet time. We perceive it as laziness. And I hope that folks would learn, eventually maybe our society will learn the lessons of our mistakes. But yeah, I'm a big believer in meditation. I love my Calm app.
I love it. So let's see, we have some responses here. So we got an absolutely, we have yes, but not enough. And then yes, Talvo, you can come off mute, please do. Let's see, I don't give myself grace how much I should. We also have, I am slowly but surely learning to make it a part of my routine. And also we have, I am now giving myself grace, forgiving and releasing. So those are all the things. So when we talk about Viva Life and our program, those are all the things involved. I just told you the MGens, which is the meditation, journaling, exercise, nutrition, and sleep. But then also we do a daily meditation at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, depending where you are in the world. There is a meditation that's there for you. So Talvo, you said you wanted to come off of mute. Hello, my friend.
Hello. So I chose grace over nap today. So I want to stop this. I'm at the gym. Anyway, I'd like to say that, living with grace takes an active and ongoing approach. I agree that, giving grace and receiving grace is highly contagious. you as one of my mentors. I see it all the time in my feed. I get a message from you sometimes. I think it's kind of like you have the mother's intuition. When I'm in that space. So I appreciate you for that. Whether and then also, you can get it, through other mechanisms as well, such as virtual mentorship, like books, podcasts, even YouTube videos. And if your algorithm is programmed right, through social media as well. So as a fellow male active duty service member, I can tell you I'm a living proof that eliminating narcissism, removing that facade, coming into situations, show authenticity and vulnerability. And that is something that I find out that others appreciate and value. Over.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you for being on here and sharing that with us. I think you brought up a great word, vulnerability. I know that they're really our audience. There's a lot of people in our audience that have a difficult time being vulnerable. And the reason why is because we're labeled as strong people, and that we don't allow ourselves to have grace because we have to be strong. We have to carry everything. And we don't have to do that. We don't have to do it. So Devin, let us know how we can get in touch with you if we so choose, or how you would like us to follow you.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm entering the foray of social media. I think I'm the last person on the planet. I'm at Devin Morrison LLC on Instagram. That's Devin Morrison LLC.
And everyone, I definitely want to say thank you for coming on. I'm Dr. Kelly OMD, board certified OBGYN and healthcare executive. You can find me on at Dr. Kelly OMD, as well as at Viva Life Health. And that's both on Instagram and YouTube. As I said, we do have a program. It's called the Viva Life 5. And essentially what we do is we help you relieve stress and practice grace for yourself so that you can be the best person that you were created to be. The way that you get into that is you just go to the link that's going to be sent out to you from your email. Please also do the survey. It helps us understand how well we are doing. And then also give us some feedback so we can bring on other guests that you would like to see. That being said, Devin Morrison, I got to invite you back because you know what? You really poured into us tonight and we so appreciate you. All right, everybody. You all have, let's see, we've done what we do. So 8:01, you know how we do. We're done for tonight. We hope to see you on our social media platforms. Please go ahead and like Devin Morrison LLC on the social media platform. He's also on LinkedIn. Go ahead and give him some love so that we can grow his followership and show him that social media can also give you credit. All right, have a good evening. All right. Thank you for being a part of the Viva Life experience. I'm Dr. Kelly OMD, board certified OBGYN and healthcare executive. If you like what you heard, then please go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. The reason why is because we are trying to educate, encourage, and inspire 1 million people to live their healthiest and wealthiest life. And this is what we're bringing you. We're bringing you educational videos. We're bringing you podcasts. We are bringing you webinars with subject matter experts, including myself, about the topics that affect you the most. So go ahead, like, subscribe, and share. We are everywhere. Have a wonderful day. Viva Life.